above the mass murderer because he failed to follow a moral code.
A man got to have a code.
Eddie, in the comics and movie, always wanted to protect innocents. He just also wanted to eat Spider-Man's brain. When the symbiote breaks Eddie out of jail, it leaves behind a teeny tiny baby Venom that bonds with Cletus. Then they become the villain Carnage, who's like, imagine if you gave all of Venom's powers to Patrick Bateman. Venom and Spider-Man have to team up to stop him, and since then he's been a longtime antagonist of both characters. Carnage has always been one of my favorite villains, just because of the design. His dark red costume, oozing over Cletus's body, rendered perfectly by his original creator, Mark Bagley. If there's a Venom sequel, I really hope the CGI is better than the 2007 level effects we saw in this movie. Anyways, let's break down the scene and what it means for future movies. The scene starts with Eddie riding his motorcycle to San Quentin for an interview. The prison guard and Eddie talk about Cassidy without ever actually saying his name. They're building up the mythos. Ever since Silence of the Lambs, this has become the standard way to introduce movie serial killers who are in a prison. The prison guard says that Cletus requested to talk to Eddie only. And I think that's interesting, that he's already fixated on Brock for some reason. In the comics, Venom is obsessed with Spider-Man. And it could be that in these movies, that obsession is repurposed for Cletus Cassidy and Eddie Brock. When we first see Cletus Cassidy, he's presented as a standard psycho in a cage. Before he says a word, we see "Welcome Eddie" written in his own blood. And this further shows his obsession with Brock, but it's also a nod to the comics, where Cletus' symbiote is actually bonded to his blood, so it's always inside him. His first words are, "Hi, Eddie." Hi, Eddie! He says, "I hope you don't mind if we skip the regular serial killers. I could talk about the Dada's patterns of arterial spray." Dada was a post-World War I art movement that essentially was saying that nothing matters. Arterial spray is referring to blood. So what this sentence means is the beauty of senseless murder. But in true Dada form, instead of just saying this, he produces a postmodern commentary on the intellectual expectations of serial killers in a film. In the comics, Cletus isn't that smart. He just likes killing shit. He tells Eddie to come closer, again mimicking Hannibal Lecter.
Closer.
Then he makes him a promise. When I get out of here, there's going to be carnage. So what does this mean for future movies? Well, obviously Eddie's symbiote is probably going to reproduce while it's inside the prison and create the villain Carnage. But this could extend further than just one movie. Way back in 2014, before the Amazing Spider-Man franchise crashed harder than Gwen Stacy off a water tower, Sony had a long-term plan for Spider-Man. They planned on creating their own version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, using Spider-Man-only properties that they had the rights to. This included a Sinister Six movie that was heavily set up in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. An email from Sony executive Juan Capday outlines his vision for the Spider-Verse. This included introducing solo films for Kraven, the Black Cat, Spider-Man in the Year 2099, and the Jackal. All of these villains would possibly come together for a culminating event called Maximum Carnage. Maximum Carnage is a pretty terrible comic crossover from the 1990s, where several villains team up with Carnage to kill random New Yorkers, while several of Spider-Man's allies team up to stop them. The entire story was intended as a tie-in to a so-so video game, which was actually advertised in thousands of schools. So, could Sony be looking ahead to a Maximum Carnage crossover?